Renato Stabile is a trial attorney and a jury consultant, and Jesse Weber is a NewsNation legal contributor. Great to have both of you here. Renato, juror number 10 said the vote was 6-6 at the end of the day yesterday. They went home, slept on it. They came back this morning, and it was 11-1. What happened overnight? Nothing more gut-wrenching for a defense attorney to hear is that you had 6-6 right off the bat. It's very common for jurors to take that initial vote. What happened overnight? I really have no idea. I mean, I think, fine, you're 6-6, you come back, maybe you try and argue it. Did people just sleep on it and think, well, you know, the evidence was the evidence? Now, I have said, I thought the prosecution's case was very strong. I did think there was a possibility of jury nullification, and I think the jurors, some of them expressed some, you know, regret and reluctance, maybe not regret at the verdict, but that this was, in fact, a sad situation, and they're not even sure why the prosecution brought the case. Yeah, Jesse, the juror number 10 who we spoke to said he doesn't think Hunter Biden should serve any jail time. 3 of the jurors said they thought this was a, quote, waste of taxpayer dollars to bring this case, even as they voted to convict him.
I think there's an argument to say, should the case have been brought? It's kind of an unorthodox case to bring with these facts. But at the same time, as you and I talked about earlier on, it's a really straightforward case to ultimately get a conviction here. When you look at the text messages, when you look at Hunter Biden's own statements, when you hear really incriminating testimony from his loved ones, including his ex-girlfriend and ex-wife, that said that he was actively engaged in drugs at this time. And, you know, the idea that you and I had a good back and forth about, did Hunter Biden accept that he was an addict, right? And I thought that was an interesting back and forth. You know, maybe when he signed the form, he didn't really believe he was addicted to drugs. The problem was, and I think this was highlighted by the prosecution in closing arguments, he went to rehab. Yeah. And when you go to rehab, you have an understanding of that. And when the juror talked about common sense, that's what it is. If you go to rehab and give it any reasonable shot, right, you have to accept you have a problem and need help. Right, that's fair. And I give the defense a lot of credit for making very creative arguments. But at the end of the day, if you put the emotion out of it, which is tough because you're dealing with very sensitive subject matter, it makes sense that it was a conviction. Renato, I was really curious that one of the jurors said that listening, it wasn't just that he wrote a book, a memoir, Hunter Biden, about his own battle with addiction. It's that they played the audiobook in the courtroom. There was something very powerful about hearing a defendant who did not take the stand in his own defense, hearing his words ring out in that courtroom, talking about my special superpower was the ability to find crack cocaine in any city in America. Well, sure, a defendant has a constitutional right not to testify at their own criminal trial, but the prosecution effectively put Hunter Biden on the witness stand. I mean, lesson learned, if you're going to write a book, don't narrate your own audiobook if you think your words might end up in court. I mean, I thought that was extremely, extremely powerful evidence. But overall, I mean, I agree, the case was a strong case. Let's not forget that. I really think the only hope was nullification, and the jury just decided they weren't going to do that. And just to add to that, I think it actually gives credence to the idea that his father won't pardon him. The reason I say that is because if Hunter Biden knew his father was going to let him off the hook, he'd have nothing to lose by taking the stand and tell his side of the story and complain about the case. But the fact that he didn't do it signifies to me he realized the dangers of taking the stand and the danger of being convicted. That was my take of that. We will, Anna. There are a lot of people out there. I just heard former Congressman Trey Gowdy, very conservative congressman, former prosecutor, say 2 things that were very interesting. Number 1 was that he didn't think that Joe Biden would be able to watch his son go to prison and not do anything about it. I don't know. Well, that's open to debate. But number 2, he said he thought that Hunter Biden would now take a plea deal in this tax trial that's coming up in September. This is, he's facing felony charges in California that he didn't pay his back taxes. He's already repaid them in full plus interest, but for several years he didn't pay them and used that money instead to do crazy, crazy stuff, also tied to his drug addiction. He thinks he'll now plead guilty. What do you both think about that? Yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense at this point. Look, now he's a convicted felon. He does have some legitimate appellate issues. I mean, there's litigation pending, you know, at least there's a petition before the United States Supreme Court about this gun issue, whether or not it should apply to users and addicts. That's a separate issue. But I think now that he's a convicted felon and has gone through this trial and all this dirty laundry got aired, does he really want to go through and does the family want to go through all of it again? I do think he will take a plea on the tax. And as a convicted felon at sentencing, that would hurt him. I was going to say. And that would hurt him because when you have prior felonies, that can increase the sentence. Look, that tax case, I think in a similar vein to the gun case, is also relatively straightforward. They're trying to prove that he willfully evaded taxes, falsified forms, lied to accountants. These cases also relatively easy to prove. And I was kind of surprised if he really believed he was going to get an acquittal here. Maybe he thought he was going to go with a jury nullification issue. You're dealing with something a little bit different with the tax case, though.
Okay, very quickly, he could face up to 25 years in prison. What do you think he actually will get?
I don't think he's going to get jail time on this case.
What about you?
15 to 21 months is the sentencing range. If anything, maybe a year, two. And again, the president said he would not pardon him. Would he commute his sentence? Would he lower the sentence? That's a different issue. But there's also a chance that there could be no prison time given this.
All right. Thanks so much for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.